All right. Hey, welcome to the Jeff Heggie Show. I'm excited today to have Clayton Echard with me. Now, Clayton, we've got some great things that we're going to talk about. He's a former collegiate athlete, professional athlete. He played for the Seattle Seahawks, and as some of you know him, the Bachelor guy. He was on the Bachelor. We were just talking about it, and he said that that's often what he gets referred to as. So I want to talk about some of that and tie it in with our Confident Athlete program, but also you've got a book, you've got one of the things that I love is how much you talk and address things with mental health. And that's something, especially with our Confident Athlete program, that we've got to deal with. And looking at that from the perspective of my coaching career as a basketball coach, I didn't know how to deal with that with my athletes. And so the fact that we can talk about that is really cool. So thank you for being here, Clayton. Please do a better job and introduce yourself.
I think that was great. Other than you kind of gave me a little bit too much credit on the NFL side. I had a cup of coffee with the Seahawks. So to say I played, I mean, I was there for 2 months. Outside of that, though, it was a great experience. It was a ton of fun. But I mean, in a nutshell, you described it. I will say this, though. I mean, it's interesting because I often will introduce myself not with those titles. It's the quick way to say this is what I've done, and then people will ask questions from there. But I found myself trying to get away from what I've done and instead focus on who I am. And so I guess the only thing I would add to it, again, those things are all great because they open up the door for people to oh, okay, like that's intriguing. Like, you know, what can you tell me about that in particular? So it's a good icebreaker. But really who I am is just a guy that wakes up every day and tries to be a little better than I was the day before. So I love education. I love mindfulness. I'm always listening to podcasts. My day job, I mean, I'm getting into real estate, so that, I love interacting with people. I just say I'm networking. If I give out my phone number once a night, then it's networking. So it just makes up for the entire 3 hours and the drinks. I'm like, it was all worth it because of the one time I gave out my number for something business related. So I'm just enjoying life. I'm in Scottsdale, just moved here, and it's been a lot of fun. But I'm in this constant state of reflection, which I'm sure we can dive into, as you had mentioned. Athletes, male athletes, especially in my experience growing up, we didn't talk about any of this stuff. So to me, this is just like unlocking a new part of my brain that I never had access to because I didn't even know it existed. So I've opened that door, and it's been overwhelming, but it's been very rewarding at the same time.
Very cool. So there's a number of directions we can go and start with this conversation, but I do want to start with the athletics. Whether you were there for 2 days or 20 years, you got to the point where you had the opportunity to play collegiate football, to be there with the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I deal with a lot with our athletes is they've got to develop the mindset around what they need to do to become the athlete that can get to that next level. There's so many, we talk about it a lot in the Confident Athlete program, is they work so hard on the physical aspect of their game and they neglect the mental game. Yep. And so do you want to just talk about that a little bit on how you've seen that, whether it was as you were going through the process or in hindsight, the importance of the mental game?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I was first exposed to positive self-talk in college by one of my college lifting coaches. And when I first heard it, I thought it was, pseudoscience. I thought it was woo-woo. I heard it and I thought, this is ridiculous. So what, I'm going to sit and look in the mirror and tell myself how great I am. I'm not buying it. The great thing is this coach was persistent. So year after year after year, he continued to preach it. By year 4, I'm like, listen, I love this guy. He's great. He's an incredible coach. And he keeps preaching this message. So maybe I'll just, open my ears up a little bit more this time around and try it. Because, I mean, if you're going to talk about something 4 years in a row, you must feel like there's value in it. And what I found was that year I started to practice it, and I was becoming more confident because every time I had a negative thought, I would instantly replace it with a positive thought. So a thought would come in, For me, a lot of times I walked on at Mizzou originally. And so I always had this battle in my head of, you're not meant to be here. You know, if you were good enough, you would have gotten a scholarship off the bat. Even when I ended up getting a scholarship at Mizzou and started playing, I still thought, you're at a deficit, man. There's a reason you're not like them. You came in as a walk-on. So you're going to get exposed eventually. And I would believe that. And so what would happen is I'd be cautious on the field with how I played. I mean, there was a point where I was running a 4.59 at 265 pounds, bench pressing 33 reps, 225. I mean, from a testing standpoint, I was a freak, and I had all the talent in the world, but I didn't believe in myself. And so I'll never forget, there was a game, we were playing Texas A&M. It was 4th down. And if we had to get a first down to end the game. Johnny Manziel was on the team at the time for A&M. So it was a big game for us. And we were ranked like 5th in the nation. And I remember I was running an over route. I snuck in the game. The coaches, I found out afterwards, were like, why the hell is Echard in? Because I was a blocking tight end. So like, why is he running a route? But I remember I was double covered because I think the other team was like, this dude's in the game at this point. They must be going to him. But I just remember I was like running and I'm like, I hope they don't throw it to me. What if I drop it? What if I drop it? And I'm glad that they didn't throw it to me, because I already was going to drop that ball, because I was already in my head about the moment was too big. No matter how much, you know, on paper I was a freak athlete, I did not possess that ability that I'm going to make this happen. And I think if I would have had that mindset, I would have probably, you know, found a way to maneuver out of that coverage and been open for the ball. Instead, I kind of ran a very safe route. And that's what will happen to athletes if you don't believe in yourself. You will not take risks. You will play cautious. And the higher up you get, the best of the best, they lay it out there. They go for the, you know, for the wild catch. They believe they can make it. And again, that belief in itself, you're more likely to visualize you making the play, which means you're more likely to actually do it. So it's huge. And in my senior year, I started to really believe in myself from an athletic standpoint. I had pulled my hamstring and my pecs at that point, so I was slower and not as strong and explosive as I was the year prior, but I was a better athlete because I just chose to believe that I was meant to be there. And I'm like, you know what? You're good enough to play at this level. And I was blocking better and making bigger plays strictly because of the mindset, even though I was not as explosive from the prior year due to injuries.
It's very cool. And it's such an important epiphany to make, to realize how important that is to it. And one of the things that we talk about a lot with our athletes is that everything we're teaching them, we're focused on their sport, but everything we're teaching them and helping them to develop, they're going to use it throughout their lives. So with that, tell me how that's impacted you going forward past the sport into everything else you've done, and how that mindset has helped you.
Yeah, well, for me, I took a very unorthodox approach to life. I went into medical sales after football, and I was challenged, but not really my character. I felt that I could get the job done, and honestly, I was pretty confident in my ability as a person. After football, I thought, if I can play at the highest level of football, what can I do? Well, then I ended up going on national television on a dating show, and I figured out very quickly what I can't do, which is date in the public eye. It didn't work out well for me. But then I had a ton of negative feedback. And this is something that a lot of high level athletes, college and professional, experience. You drop a pass, you miss a block, fumble the ball. You'll get these negative messages that come in. You suck. You shouldn't play. If I find out where you live, I'm going to, take you out. You ruin this for us. Like, I mean, people I saw teammates getting death threats when I was in college. And so I started receiving those same things when I was on national television. And it was in that moment that I had a decision to make. Either I believed what everybody said and I made that my new reality, which started to happen. I mean, the scary thing is as you get 5, 10, 20, 100 people, the more times you hear something, the more likely you are to believe it. And so I started to believe the narrative that was being sent my way. And thankfully, though, I had the right people in my corner. But then I finally took action one day. I woke up, I said, I'm going to choose to stop letting these random people influence me. There's nothing that says I have to let them impact the way I think. That's my own choice. I can stop listening to them altogether, or I can choose to hear them and try to pull the constructive criticism from it. But there's no reason why I need to let them tear me down. I mean, that, and I just felt that that is my own decision, whether I allow these words to impact me. And so I started to, as I read these comments, I would have this positive self-talk, where I'd see a comment, this guy sucks, he's a terrible human being, he doesn't deserve love. I would read that and I would instantly go, they don't know me. And I would just have this instant just shut down of a response. And I kept doing this. So every time I'd read it, this guy's is I hope he never finds somebody. I was like, I will. And I just kept saying this in my head until finally I was like getting that courage or that confidence back. And then now, I mean, it's you practice it enough, whatever you say and again and again and again that you repeat does become reality. And so now I can read those things and I just laugh. I shrug it off. I'm like, whatever, these people don't know me. They like, I don't hear anybody that's close to me saying this. So it's very powerful. And I still use it to this day. And I hope more athletes can see that the second you choose confidence, it is a choice. Easier said than done, but you can absolutely choose to be confident. You can't, are you going to wake up and do it one day? Probably not. No, it's practice, right? Just like football weekend or any sport. You don't just wake up, go into the gym and start throwing down dunks, right? You got to work on your vertical. You got to be good at dribbling to get to the rim. You got to do all these other things to make it happen. In the same way, it's with a mentality. You don't just wake up one day and go, all right, cool, I'm choosing confidence. It's like anything else that requires practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the exact message we give our athletes too. It's just like any other skill you're trying to develop. It requires practice, and it's not a one-time thing. It's not, I went to the gym once and now I'm buff, right?
Yep.
Same thing with your confidence.
1,000%. Yep.
So do you have, I mean, it sounds like you've got some really good habits when it comes to replacing negative self-talk and those sort of things. Do you have any morning routines or daily rituals that you do yourself?
Yeah, for me, I used to be super structured, so I would almost to my own fault, I would organize my entire day so that I didn't have any unknown. Now I'm a big believer in welcoming the unknown, because the unknown leads to growth, right? Like when you're in an uncomfortable situation, you're more likely to acquire the skill set or find a solution to why you have that discomfort. So I've started to become less structured, and I've welcomed it because it challenges me. But I still like structure. I think we all, to some degree, like to have that in our lives. So for me, first thing in the morning, I always go to the gym because I want to start my morning off releasing endorphins. I want that feel good, those emotions, so that'll carry into the rest of my day. And I've seen studies where it says that those hormones can be released up to a few hours. So you're basically protecting your morning with positive emotion through working out. So I start that off. While I'm at the gym, I listen to a podcast. It's either a mental health podcast or it's a real estate podcast. But I give myself that hour to educate myself, to either grow in my mentality or grow in my profession. Also, as you're listening to stuff, you're less likely to have negative thoughts because you're focused on the words that are coming through the audio. So I take the first part of my day and I protect my own mentality with a positive message, with that positive stress that is working out. And that sets the tone for my day. So I think it's really important for people to start their day off on a good note, and however you can do that. Some people meditate, some people go on a walk, but how you start your day really does set the tone for how it ends up winding up for the rest of the day.
Awesome. And I want to go into more on the mental side and mental health and stuff, but I want to talk about the show too. Tell me how that came about, how you got on it, and the process.
Yeah, so I had somebody slide in my DMs. That's the way to do it nowadays. So it was a casting agent, and I thought it was spam. I was very, very hesitant. I thought, okay, like at some point they're gonna ask me to wire money to some foreign account, and I have a rich aunt somewhere overseas. But none of that ever happened. So I was currently, at the time, I was working in Missouri as a sales rep, and I had just grown complacent, and I was really going through the motions in life. And I had a good life, but I just remember one day thinking, this is going to be the rest of my life. I mean, you found your career, and as of right now, your trajectory is to stay here long term. And I got very uncomfortable. I thought, I don't want this to be my life. There's got to be more for me. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing what's truly my calling. I don't know why I thought, okay, well, reality TV must be it then. I never watched it, but I was in that place of, I need a change of pace. But I was actually interviewing with another company, same industry, and I thought, I just need to switch cities. That's all it is. Then I'll be able to find my happiness. But then that job offer ended up not being what I thought it was. There was information withheld from me that I then uncovered and found, wait, this is a shoddy job opportunity. And so I had already told my company that I was looking to leave. So then they said, well, okay, are you going to leave or not? All the while, this recruiter was still in my DMs, and I was like, you know what? My job thinks I'm going to leave now. This other job fell through. So if I'm ever going to jump, I might as well jump when the ground is crumbling from underneath me. And so I said, all right, I'll do it. And went on the first show when I was one of 30 guys fighting for one woman. And I just thought, like, hey, make it a couple days. And as long as you don't get sent home night one, I would consider that a success. So that was my thought. And I go, someone will watch it on TV and go, I like that guy. And some girl will reach out to me and say, hey, I saw you on TV, and, I'd love to get to know you. But then I got asked to be the Bachelor. And so I said, okay, this is really ramping up quick. So I took that opportunity, and then I was the one guy with the 30 women, dating them all at once. Absolute train wreck. I fell in love with everything, the experience. I fell in love with too many women at once. I was overwhelmed, but in a positive way at first. I was so joyous and grateful and humbled to be there. And I just was on cloud nine, living this experience out. And then, faced the hard reality very quickly of what reality TV can become very quickly, which is a mess. And people tune in for the mess. And I walked into a room full of mess that I was, apparently throwing, stuffed in the room to make it a mess, but I didn't even realize it. So it took a toll on me, and I faced a lot of negativity, but everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. So I learned a lot from it, and have now utilized my platform to speak on mental health.
Very cool. So when we talked before, I told you I don't watch it, so I don't know a lot about it. But how long is a season that you were filming? What kind of time frame were you looking at?
Yeah, so each season is about 2 months. So it takes 2 months to film, and then they air it, but they usually air it delayed. So you're usually, there's a 4-month window, and then they air the season. So that's hard too, for multiple reasons. One, because in those 4 months, you can experience a lot of growth, and then everyone's watching it back as if it's real time. So and I still get messages like this today where people will watch my season, which ended a year ago. But I will get people that'll message me and go, I can't believe what you did with so-and-so. You're a monster. And I'm like, hey, listen, that was filmed a year and a half ago. Okay. So I get it. Like, you can feel that way, but just understand that it's been a year and a half. I'm not who I was, at that point. So, but that's where, again, like it lives forever. It's the beast that lives forever. And people could watch it 5 years from now, and I'll probably still get those messages. I can't believe you did this. A funny story. One of the episodes, something went wrong, and then I saw multiple comments, and they said the show aired on National Women's Day. And all the people were commenting, I can't believe of all days you got, upset with her on National Women's Day. I was like, this was recorded 4 months ago. I was like, I didn't even do this on National Women's Day. That's just when they aired it. But that's the wildness of TV, is like people think it's happening right then and there. And it's something you have to accept. And the hard part too is accepting what people see. Whatever they see is reality. When there's 90% of what's filmed doesn't ever make the airwaves. And so you have to accept the edit for what it is. And that was tough when I'm like, hey, there's a lot more that happened here, but I can't say anything about that. So it was very hard to swallow at first that my reality was what was shown, not what I knew it to be. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the edit was so far off. There just were things that I'm like, yeah, that would have been great if this was included, but the show can only put so much into 2 hours. So they picked what they thought was the most important to show. And, it's not personal. It's just business.
So one thing, I mean, like I said, I don't watch it, but of course I've seen it. And so one question I've always had, and would love to hear your perspective on it, because you've actually been in that situation as one of the 30 and as the one. I've always thought, okay, and that's why I wanted to know how long it was filmed over.
Yeah.
You see these women go home after day one and they're crying because they were in love. Like, how does that happen? How do you fall in love in an episode or even over 2 months? And by what you've told me, you've fell in love with multiple.
Well, yeah. So I would say the tears on night one are probably sadly more out of embarrassment, because nobody wants to get sent home at first, right? Like you just get there and then you get sent home. It can be embarrassing. And so that's where the tears can come out of embarrassment. They can also come out of just like broken dreams or unmet expectations, where somebody gets called, you're going to be on The Bachelor. They're so excited. They tell all their friends to keep it quiet. They show up, they get on the plane, like they get on the plane, they show up, they pop out the limo, and they're like, this is wild. This is a crazy experience. And then, 10 hours later, they're getting sent home, and in their head, they might have, dreamt about them making it really far and getting to travel all over. And then it just gets shut down night one. So I think that's where a lot of the tears come from at night one, is just unmet expectations and embarrassment, probably. If I had to guess, no one's fallen in love night one. And if they are, then, they need to probably reevaluate how quickly they do so. But yeah, then it's a matter of how can you fall in love with somebody in 2 months with the time that you have with them. And I believe that I did. I mean, I fell in love with 3 women at once. So I believe that you get a lot more time when there's less people. So first, day one, you can maybe talk to people for 5 minutes. I mean, at most. But towards the end of the season, you start to be able to sit down for a few hours and have those, talk through those things. But I mean, you know this as far as anybody else, like in the real world. I mean, how much do you really know somebody in 2 months? You might have a good idea, but I remember my last relationship. I mean, I started uncovering more things about my previous relationship at the 6-month mark, at the 1 year mark, 2-year mark. Like, things take time to manifest and develop, and everyone can put their best foot forward for 2 months as well. So you also have that issue where people put on a facade, and you have to figure out whether or not they're there for the right reasons, which is a big saying on the show. Everyone wants to know for the right reasons. It's so overused, but it's the reality of it. People go on that show for business opportunities. They don't care about finding love. They're there to strictly push their own business. So you can imagine as the lead how that can be very, that can be very unsettling when you start to wonder, is this person really into me, or are they just trying to make it farther on the show so they can get more exposure? So right. A lot of variables involved.
Then another question I've always had: do you have an earpiece in, or do you really remember all their names?
I don't have no earpieces. No, I never had an earpiece. I had producers around me that would help me, of course, like remember names. that was helpful, because there was no way. I mean, if anyone thinks I'm going to remember 30 names in the first night, you need to call me up and figure out what my secrets are, right? Because that's impressive in itself. No, I would, I'd have people that were there with me, and I'd say, hey, who's that over there again? I want to go say something real quick. And so, I had a team of people around me. They're like, that's so and so. So yeah, I had a little bit of help.
Okay, all right. So what would you say from, and I know we're gonna get into this as we continue the conversation, but from being on that show, what is the best thing that came out of that?
Oh man, a lot of stuff came from it. I would say the sacrifice of my ego. I won't say I was forced to, but I felt that I was so broken down by everybody. So much negativity came in. And at first I fought, and I hopped on podcasts, and I tried to defend my actions. And I said, no, you guys are all misunderstanding. This is why I did it. And I kept explaining. And one day I read a comment that just hit me. It struck me that they said, I don't think Clayton's a bad guy, but he keeps trying to explain himself, and I understand where he's coming from. But what bothers me is he's not accepting impact for the the impact, or sorry, he's not accepting the impact for the decisions that he made. He's so focused on trying to explain his intentions as opposed to accepting impact. And that's when it hit me. I realized that I wasn't doing it because my ego was backed into a corner, and I wanted to be right. So I was so focused on trying to be right instead of trying to understand, the other side of the coin. And so I got so worn down from fighting that my ego had nothing left. There was nothing left there for me to protect. And I said, you know what? How about I try a different approach? How about I just try to listen instead of, explain, sit there and listen, hear what the other side is saying, and try to make sense of it. So I did that. That's what I did. And as I started to listen, I started to understand more. And then I would, when I was asked from that point forward, I wasn't trying to be right. I was more so, explaining what I had learned. And then people go, oh, now he's accepting accountability. Now he understands what he did. And sure enough, I did. I was like, okay, wait, this makes sense now, because I'm finally willing to listen. And that's where it all starts. I mean, if you want to start with mindfulness, if you want to create change in your life, the very first thing you have to do is make a conscious decision to do so. I mean, if someone's not willing to do it, you're not going to do it. So you have to wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to try. I'm just going to try. I'm going to leave the door open and see if I can pick something out of this. So that was probably the greatest lesson that I learned, was sacrifice the ego. And that will lead to, magnanimous growth, but it'll also lead to a greater understanding of the people and things around you in life, right? Like, a lot of us are just misunderstood. I think that's more what it is than anything. We all just want to be loved and respected and be happy. So we're not all intrinsically evil. If we do bad things, it's more because we're probably hurting inside and we're projecting that anger outwardly. But those individuals too just wish that they were understood. They want people to feel that pain so they understand it. It's why bullies bully, kids, right? They bully the kids because they want them to feel the pain that they feel inside so that they don't feel alone. Like, if I'm hurting like this, I want you to hurt too. So yeah, I mean, but if we realize that everyone's just trying to be understood, and you set the ego aside and you don't care about being right, then you're in a really good headspace. And so that's the greatest thing that came out of it by far, was my ego got beat to a pulp and had no power left. And I said, all right, ego, go ahead and sit there. And I'm going to try to handle this differently, because you're not helping me out right now. You continue to, get me more bruised and battered.
Awesome. So what would be your biggest regret from the show?
Oh man, I went back and forth. People have asked me if I have regrets, and I ultimately think I don't have any. I wish I would have done things better. Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. I wish I would have handled myself better. But I also believe that I was meant to be the Clayton that I was in those moments. Not the Clayton I am today. I was meant to be that immature, emotionally immature, Clayton, because that was how I was going to learn my lessons. That's how I was going to, then from learning the lessons, then be able to use my voice to share with others. If I would have had a happy, if I'd have walked off into the sunset with my person on the show and everybody loved me, I wouldn't be speaking on mental health to the degree that I am right now. Because I would have just, no one would have gave me any trouble, and I would have been happy, and I would have just been waltzing around and doing my own thing. But because I was torn down and, beaten into the ground, that really made me I had to focus on my mental health. I had no choice. And then as I started focusing on it, I realized the power in it. And that's why I shared. So I can't really sit here and say I have regrets, because I needed to be, I needed to be broken. I needed to be, in order for me. And for me to learn and then be able to help others. So no regrets, just I would, wish I'd have done it differently, but I did what I did.
Are you still in contact with people from the show?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've made amends with most of the women that I hurt when I was there. Yeah, I've had conversations with them. We've healed, forgiven each other. And it's been a beautiful thing, right? I mean, because there were points where we embarrassed, I wouldn't say they didn't really embarrass me as much as I just embarrassed them. And, I, for a lot of time past, that we didn't have any discussions. It was like, we didn't want to, even face each other. But then, the anger subsides, the emotion subsides, and then you can start rationally looking at what had occurred. And, if you're willing, you say, okay, well, is this healable? Like, can I fix this? I don't want to hold a grudge. I don't want there to be animosity between us. And we were able to do that. So now I think we're some of our biggest supporters of each other, because there's only a few of us that have went through this experience. So no one else will really fully understand. And that's why I think it's so important to have that support system of individuals that went through it as well, because I don't feel like I'm alone. I know that I can go call up those individuals, and it's like, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I was there. So, I love my family to death, but even them, like, they weren't there. They've heard everything I've told them, but they weren't there in that situation. So there's a comfort in having people that have went through it. And that's why I've just, I've made amends with all of those individuals, and now we're all supporting each other, which is pretty cool.
Very cool. That actually leads into another question, and kind of starting to fade away into other topics, but the power of your network, the people you surround yourself with. Just on that aspect, the reason we're connected is through Amy Kelly. She introduced us. Mm-hmm. And, amazing person. And there's so much power by the people that you surround yourself with. Do you want to just talk on that subject a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think whoever you're around is what you will eventually become, if you aren't already those people. What I mean by that is that, the words that are said, you're going to pick up that language and be using the same words. The beliefs that they hold, you're going to probably hold similar beliefs to them. And that's not a bad thing, to have that camaraderie, to have that sense of connection. But I think that we need to be challenged as humans. We need to have the other side around us as well that holds differing beliefs. And so often I think our society deals with this issue of everyone only surrounds themselves with what they're comfortable with. Well, then you start to only see one perspective, and it's a dangerous game, because then you won't be able to even see the other side, because you're so emotionally attached to these beliefs and values that everyone else in your circle holds, that you just can't see the other side, and you won't see it, because the second somebody has a difference of opinion, your emotion just goes 0 to 100, and all the rationale goes out the window. So I'm a big believer in, having a close circle of a few individuals that you can come to with anything. You're like, I can go to that person and tell them everything, and they'll be there for me at a drop of a dime. They'll travel to come help me out should I need it, or pick up the phone. But I do think that we need to challenge ourselves to have a very a very diverse circle around us. And if you want to, if you want to find success in an area of your life, then surround yourself with people that have found success already in that area of life. So for me, I mean, being a real estate agent, if I want to find success in real estate, am I going to surround myself with other successful real estate agents, or am I going to surround myself with a bunch of school teachers? Like, no, if I'm trying to learn real estate, I want to be around the people that have the experience and like can help, and like what the words they say. Okay, I start to pick up on what works and what doesn't. And so, yeah, that's very big. And I think people don't realize that the people that you spend your time around, you start to pick up their antics, you start to become more like them. So we need to step back sometimes and look at our circle and say, is this what I want to be? Because your friends are a direct reflection of who you are for the most part. So it's important that we understand that. And yeah, I mean, that's something that it's a conscious choice. And I think most times people don't, they stick with their friend group that they know, and they feel bad when they're like, oh, man, I've been with my friends since middle school. I'm an adult now, and I just don't feel like I connect. It's like, that's probably a sign of growth. Right? Or things are changing, and that's okay. You don't have to be friends with the same people you're friends with in elementary school. That's just people change, and that's part of life, and change, I think, should be welcomed. But often we see it as a negative, like, oh, great, I have to change and do this. And now all this unknown scares me, and it is scary, but it can be very rewarding. So yeah, sorry, kind of a roundabout way of answering it, but I think there's so much value in surrounding yourself with what you want to become.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was bang on. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So was it your experience on The Bachelor that did you start going through some mental health issues that got you interested in speaking about it more, or what got you to this point that you wanted to address this and be an advocate of mental health?
Yeah. So for me, I'd struggled with mental health since I was in 7th grade. I was bullied. I was much smaller than I am now. So I went from a Lutheran school to a public school. I was called the preacher boy. I was engaged in multiple fights. I was called a lot of expletives. After I dyed my hair blonde, because NSYNC was cool back then. So I tried to get frosted tips, but my dad dyed my entire hair blonde. So I ended up getting called Sunshine from Remember the Titans, the QB that was there, had the whole blonde hair. Well, I liked that, but my male counterparts then just continued to bully me even more. And then I started to struggle with body dysmorphia. I didn't realize until I've since researched it later that body dysmorphia and bullying are correlated. So if you don't feel good enough about your body, it's because you typically, the bullying made you feel that you had something wrong with you. And so you can start to overanalyze, why do people not like me? What is it about me that people want to bully me for? So there is a connection between those two. So I struggle with body dysmorphia, not feeling good enough for the majority of my life. And then the show tore me back down to a really dark place where I started to have some suicidal ideation. I just started having negative thoughts, very dark thoughts come into my head. And with the depression, social anxiety that I was facing, because I got all these messages online and I didn't want to go out in public because I was afraid that if I'm getting all these messages online, then I'm going to go out in public, and these people I see in public, there's some of the individuals that are typing these messages to me. So I just became very depressed, very anxious. But then I knew I had one of two ways to go about it. I could just give up and let people just tear me down until there was nothing left, or I could, fight back and try to build myself back up. And so that was where I was faced with. I'm like, you know what, you've hit rock bottom, man. So your choice is to either lay here or get back up. And then as I got up, I thought, I'm going to just share my journey with everybody else. I'm going to let people see my change and progression so that they can see me change and go, okay, if he can do it after everything you went through, then I can too. So I was just hoping to serve as an example of, you can get kicked all the way down into the dark crevasse, but you can still climb up out of even what I went through. So I was hoping that would give hope to others. And it has to many from what I've, received DMs and comments in public.
So your book, 180 Degrees, is that what it's about? Is your story, your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an autobiography. And it just starts in 7th grade is when I chose to start the book. And I kind of bounce back and forth with like where I am today, but I try to follow it in chronological order. And so it's 7th grade on up with my struggles. And I just wanted people to, understand the real me and say, hey, this is why I am who I am. And I want you to know that I struggle too. We all do, but oftentimes we judge a book by its cover. We don't look at the pages within and get to know somebody. And that's what this book was. I said, if you really want to know who I am, then before you cast judgment, read this book. More than likely, you're going to find out there's a lot of things that you didn't know about me that will make more sense as to why I've taken the actions that I did, why I am who I am today. And yeah, there was just a lot of misunderstanding out there of people made judgment calls based off of my physical appearance. And it drove me insane. And so I wrote the book. Partly I wanted to say, listen, like, this is why it's so dangerous to judge a book by its cover. Because while you sit here and tell me that, oh, look at him, he's a big, strong guy, he's probably always been a stud athlete, and he's gotten all the women, he's, his entire life, this guy's never faced a struggle a day in his life. I'm like, open my book and you'll find out that I was bullied. I was tiny. I was friend zoned by all the girls in middle school, high school. They called me Big Brother. So I felt like I wasn't, sought after. I was a 4th string quarterback my freshman year of high school. I didn't play varsity until my senior year. I was on JV as a junior, as a wide receiver. My freshman brother, who was 2 years younger than me, started varsity before I did. I had 0 scholarship offers coming out of high school. So I'm like, this is the real me, not the one you projected onto me. And I want you to know this, because if you find out that I was bullied, that I was, didn't feel good enough, now you can see that I am no different than so many of you that make it seem like I never struggled. I've struggled like anybody else. But that's why I wanted to share that message, to say, you got to be careful with just projecting what you think people are, because they can be completely different than what you perceive them to be. And that goes for everybody. So it just felt right to get that out there. And I hope with people that have read my book, that they'll be more cautious to judge others so quickly.
So, and we talked about this before the show, even as myself as a basketball coach, I didn't understand mental health issues. And I was more of the coach, well, suck it up, get on the line, we're going to run. And didn't know how to deal with those things. And so having my first athlete that I had to deal with it was my own daughter. Mm-hmm. It was still, I don't know, get on the line. What do we do? Right. And so I think that's powerful to be able to share that with people. So the people that are ignorant to it can have a better picture of what's happening. Yeah. But my question for you is, what do you say, or what advice do you give, not to those that are on the outside looking at someone else that's dealing with things, but to the people that are dealing with it themselves?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you hear a lot in the mental health world is you are not alone. And I think if you have to say one thing to somebody, I think that's one of the best things you can say. Now, I know some people will say, well, that's overused, but it's always great to be reminded that, what you're going through, there are others out there. There are others out there that are currently in that exact situation as you. There are others that have already overcome that situation that you have. And there are others that have yet to go through what you're going to go through. So, but understanding that, it will hopefully allow that individual to go, okay, I'm not alone. And maybe they can start to look for that support, or that support finds them. And I often find that the second that person feels supported, and that they're more likely to open up. And then when they open up, they're more likely to start finding solutions to better manage the struggles that they're facing. I've read many statistics on suicide, and some of the top reasons why individuals contemplate it is because they feel hopeless. They feel that there's no hope for them, that I can't fix the way I feel. And so if I have too much weight on my shoulders and there is no changing my life, then maybe I should just, end it all because I can't fix this. So that hopelessness is some of the top reasons why individuals start having these dark thoughts, at least like what the data shows. Loneliness is another, thing that individuals express as to why they start to go into these really dark and depressed states, is because they feel alone. So when you feel alone and you lack hope, you can't help but get past that. And that's where those are the two things that we can address by saying you're not alone. And I'm here for you, and I'm willing to listen, and I want to help you. And that will save so many people's lives. A really cool story that I share from time to time. It's not my story. But Kevin Briggs, it was a retired California Highway Patrol officer. He would patrol the Golden Gate Bridge, and he saved over 200 people because they were standing over the side of the bridge, looking down to potentially jump to their death. And he rolled up in his car and sat there and spoke with these individuals for sometimes hours, complete stranger. And he went from being a stranger to being the person that saved their lives. And to me, that was really powerful because a few survivors had mentioned that it was his willingness to listen, and they felt seen and heard. And that's why they decided to give life another chance. So I'm like, hey, if a complete stranger can save a life, then imagine what you as a friend or family member can do if you just sit there and listen to that person who's hurting, or ask them how they're doing. We hold way more power than we realize just with our presence alone.
That's amazing. And again, for the listeners, I'm going to put all the links and everything in the show notes so that you can get the book. You'll be able to connect with Clayton and everything. But what does the future look like for Clayton?
So, man, I wish if I knew. I still don't even know what I'm gonna eat for breakfast tomorrow. I know I'm gonna eat for breakfast tomorrow, but I'm pretty regimented on that, steak and eggs. But I don't know. I really don't know, and I love that. For once in my life, I welcome the uncertainty, because every day I wake up, I don't really have expectations, and I used to always have expectations and think into the future of this is what I want my life to be. Now I just wake up. I go, just wake up and be yourself and have fun, and I've loved that. I've loved that approach. I will say this: my 5-year plan is to just be happier than I am today. So I keep it at that. And I know it can sound corny, like, oh, he just wants happiness and peace and love, and it's like, no, I really do. I mean, if 5 years from now I'm happier and more loved than I am today, who cares what I'm doing? I could be overseas as a part of a circus or act or something. I don't care what my job is. Like, just if I'm happier and healthier, then I've found success. So that to me is like, as far as what it looks like, I don't know. I don't want to say, I don't want to confine myself to say this is what I hope it becomes. I'm just kind of more in the headspace of like, let's see what happens. Your life's already been crazy enough. Might as well just keep ramping it up.
Awesome. So like I said, in the show notes and the blog post, it'll have all the links. But for those that are just listening audio right now, how do they find you, connect with you, stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so I try to make it really easy for everybody, including myself, so I don't forget, because I made everything. It's just my first and last name. I hope I never forget my first and last name. If I do that, we're very much in trouble. My Instagram is just Clayton Echard, ClaytonEchard. You can find me on Instagram there. And then my website, same thing, ClaytonEchard.com. So doesn't get any easier than that. That's where everything's going down. If I ever have any updates, I post on my Instagram or my website. So it's easy to keep track of.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story. And again, to the listeners, I'm going to have the link in the bio the show notes for the book. Go get it, check it out, learn more about the story. And, it could really have an impact on yourself and others that you can support. So thank you, Clayton.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Athletes put a lot of time, money, and effort into the physical aspect of their sport, but they often neglect the mental game. And the mental game, it's just as important as the physical. In fact, it's often the differentiating factor between good and great athletes. If you really want to reach your full potential, if you want to be a great athlete, you've got to pay attention to the mental game. Now, come and join us in the Confident Athlete program, where you're going to learn how to develop powerful mindset, extreme self-confidence, and really take your game to the next level. Come and check us out at confidentathleteprogram.com/membership.
Who you surround yourself with really does matter. The people you associate with and spend time with have a huge impact on who you become and what you do in your life. Hi, my name is Jeff Heggie, and I want to tell you about my Inner Circle Mastermind group. This is a group that's designed to surround you with like-minded high achievers who will help you to think bigger and amplify the performance of your business and your life while tearing down all the barriers that are holding you back. A mastermind is the fastest way to get you to the next level. If you're ready to network and connect with other successful entrepreneurs and influencers, go to coachheggie.com/mastermind.